like to see with Iran? I'd like to see them call me. You know, John Kerry speaks to them a lot. John Kerry tells them not to call. That's a violation of the Logan Act. And frankly, he should be prosecuted on that. But my people don't want to do anything that's... Only the Democrats do that kind of stuff, you know? If it were the opposite way, they'd prosecute him under the Logan Act. But John Kerry violated the Logan Act. He's talking to Iran and has many meetings and many phone calls, and he's telling them what to do. That is a total violation of the Logan Act.
So back to this part of the story. President Trump accusing John Kerry of breaking the law, violating what's known as the Logan Act by meeting with Iran's foreign minister multiple times. So let's bring in Fox News senior strategic analyst General Jack Keane for a lot of foreign policy tonight. Good to have you, General.
Yeah, good to be here, Shannon.
What do you make between the back and forth by these two? Because the president says, listen, he's operating at a disinterest to my administration. He admits he's doing it. A spokesperson for Kerry saying the president has this all wrong.
No, this is pretty outrageous behavior on the part of Secretary Kerry. We've got a new president. He was elected by the people. He's entitled to put in play his foreign policy. The Congress has oversight of it. Kerry disagrees with that foreign policy, and he's absolutely undermining it with a foreign government. Not just a foreign government, but an adversary of the United States since 1980. They've been killing us steadily. It's pretty horrible behavior on his part.
Well, and today, Secretary of State Mike Pompeo said, we do not want war. That's not our message to Iran, but we will do what we have to do if you come after us or our interests. Senator Ben Sasse, a Republican, said this, and I quote, that's for Grandma, I'm warning you, General Soleimani, he's the commander of the Quds Force, is an evil, quote, bastard, but he's not an idiot. He knows the U.S. military is able to bring his IRGC butchers to their knees if Americans are targeted. He should rethink his recent provocative moves. Where does this bubbling tension now go?
Well, I agree with the senator, but I'm not sure he understands our history. The history is they blew up the U.S. Embassy in Lebanon, the Marine barracks in Lebanon, the U.S. Embassy in Kuwait, the Air Force barracks in Saudi Arabia. For 4 years, they targeted our soldiers by Iranian-trained Shia militia in Iraq, killed over 600 of them. So they have been about killing us for a long time. This is the first administration, Democratic or Republican, that has ever truly confronted the Iranians. And you can see what's happening. Their economy is being crippled by the sanctions. There's a significant amount of unrest. And they're trying to figure out what to do about this. And obviously, they're thinking of some kind of moves.
How can he move his face? Now, he's got a new book out, and it's really a true reflection of Kerry. The book's awful, and it, too, is made from wood. But there is some news in there. Apparently, while the Trump administration was busy with their own foreign policy, Kerry was busy with his own.
There are people in the intelligence community who say that you've been telling the Iranians to wait out President Trump and the administration and to wait until there's a Democratic president in 2021. Is that accurate?
Well, I think everybody in the world is sitting around talking about waiting out President Trump. Every Secretary of State, former Secretary of State, continues to meet with foreign leaders, goes to security conferences, goes around the world. We all do that.
See, that's what happens when an anchor actually reads the book. So I'm thinking holding secret meetings with a regime that's openly hostile to the American people seems a little like, what's that word? Hobby, backstabbing. Oh, how about collusion? Yep, for 2 years, we've watched the media chase a phantom in an effort to undo an election. Meanwhile, Captain Corkboard here is meeting with the enemy.
Prosecute him under the Logan Act. But John Kerry violated the Logan Act. He's talking to Iran and has many meetings and many phone calls, and he's telling them what to do. That is a total violation of the Logan Act.
All right, that allegation doesn't even smell mildly correct. So fact check this for us.
Well, the president is saying in no uncertain terms that John Kerry, in fact, is breaking the law. And what Kerry has been doing, essentially, is what he says is what every other Secretary of State after leaving office has done before him. That is maintaining ties with their former counterparts around the world. John Kerry makes no bones about the fact that he does maintain ties to various foreign ministers and other world leaders, including Javad Zarif, the foreign minister of Iran. And in fact, we have a statement from a Kerry spokesman saying, let's cut through the distractions and talk about real facts. Secretary Kerry stays in touch with his former counterparts around the world, just like every other previous Secretary of State. And in a long phone conversation with Secretary Pompeo earlier this year, he went into great detail about what he had learned about the Iranians' view. No secrets were kept from this administration. So the president making this allegation, the Kerry folks, of course, denying it, saying this is just, business as usual. This is what former diplomats do. They maintain those ties.
Former Secretary of State John Kerry is now responding to accusations that President Trump made just moments ago. The president claiming without proof that Kerry is breaking the law and telling Iran not to call him, saying that he is negotiating with Iran, that Kerry's negotiating with Iran. That's what the president. Let's bring in CNN senior diplomatic correspondent Michelle Kaczynski. You have gotten a statement from John Kerry. Tell us what he's saying.
Right. This has been litigated before. There were members of the administration that brought up this subject late last year. Now President Trump seems to be taking it further by publicly declaring that former Secretary of State John Kerry should be prosecuted for his conversations with members of the Iranian leadership. So here's what Kerry's spokesperson is saying in response to this. Everything President Trump said today is simply wrong. End of story. He's wrong about the facts, wrong about the law, and sadly he's been wrong about how to use diplomacy to keep America safe. Secretary Kerry helped negotiate a nuclear agreement that worked to solve an intractable problem. The world supported it then, supports it now. We'd hope the president would focus on solving foreign policy problems for America instead of attacking his predecessors for theater. So in the past, again, when this came up just months ago, Kerry and his spokespeople responded by saying he's just staying in touch with his former counterparts the way every previous Secretary of State has done. And he was advocating for what was consistent with U.S. policy. So his people, and he himself has said that he has these conversations as a matter of course to talk to them about issues affecting the U.S.-Iran relationship, and that he is not advocating against current U.S. policy. Of course, Trump is claiming that Kerry is trying to persuade Iranians not to talk to Trump, and Kerry didn't address that point exactly in this statement, but we expect to hear more from them later.
There are people in the intelligence community who say that you've been telling the Iranians to wait out President Trump and the administration and to wait until there's a Democratic president in 2021. Is that accurate?
Well, I think everybody in the world is sitting around talking about waiting out President Trump. Every Secretary of State, former Secretary of State, continues to meet with foreign leaders, goes to security conferences, goes around the world. We all do that.
Okay, so the president's personal attorney heading to Eastern Europe to encourage a foreign government to press ahead with an investigation or two that may very well damage a political rival of his client. We're talking about Joe Biden. Well, tonight, there are calls for a Senate investigation and more. So let's ask the man himself, the president's personal lawyer, Rudy Giuliani. Mayor, great to have you with us tonight.
How are you, Shannon?
I'm good. Now, listen, you've heard a lot of the questions about why you're doing this and whether it's okay.
Sure. Oh, my gosh.
I want to read you something from the New York Times. Won't surprise you that they're not fans of this idea.
Oh, my gosh.
I know,
that should
you're
be really
surprised.
objective. That should be really objective.
They say Mr.
see.
Giuliani's plans create the remarkable scene of a lawyer for the president of the United States pressing a foreign government to pursue investigations that Mr. Trump's allies hope could help him in his reelection campaign. And it comes after Mr. Trump spent more than half of his term facing questions about whether his 2016 campaign conspired with a foreign power. So,
Wow.
Mr. Mayor, let's start with the optics.
Well, that really turns it around. I mean, the reality is that I wasn't going there to encourage them to start an investigation. They have an investigation. They have an investigation of how Ukrainians helped the DNC and Hillary operatives to get, in some cases, false, dirty information about the Trump campaign. In one case, an absolutely, completely falsely created book that's already been determined by Ukrainian courts. There was a great fear that the new president would be surrounded by literally enemies of the president who were involved in that, and people that are involved with other Democratic operatives and one particular oligarch who's quite corrupt, and that they would influence him. And I'm convinced from what I've heard from two very reliable people tonight that the president is surrounded by people who are enemies of the president and people who are, in at least one case, clearly corrupt and involved in this scheme. And it's really a shame. And the reality is this has nothing to do with the election of 2020. The election of 2020 is a long time from now. And if I wanted to meddle in that election, which I don't, I could have held this for a year and dropped it right before the convention. The reality is I came about this by accident investigating Ukrainian collusion with Democrats to affect the election and also to help create the false narrative against the president. And over the next 3 to 4 months, you're going to find out all about that, including the corruption that went on with the Steele dossier and the corruption that went on with Papadopoulos and the way he was set up. It's all part of one large conspiracy that has about 2 or 3 parts to it.
Okay.
So I've decided, Sharon, I'm not going to go to the Ukraine.
You're not going to go?
I'm not going to go because I think I'm walking into a group of people that are enemies of the president, in some cases enemies of the United States, and in one case, an already convicted person who has been found to be involved in assisting the Democrats with the 2016 election.
Okay, so
a gentleman, I'll give you his name.
Your decision
a gentleman
not
by
to
the
go.
name of
Your decision not to go.
Let me finish. A gentleman by the name of Lyshenko,
Yes.
who supplied a black book that was found to be fraudulent and never used because it was a fraudulent, incriminating statement that was totally untrue.